Hi, Summerside family. My name is Liz Fildy. I am the administrative assistant in the church office. I became a believer a long time ago at about the age of 8. My best friend's family had opened up their home to a Bible club that met weekly. And it was through that I learned about Jesus and that he really loved me. So I prayed and asked him into my heart. For a long time, I thought that was supposed to make me perfect. So I would try every day when I woke up to live perfectly for that day. Never worked out. Went to bed that night knowing that I had messed up. This went on for a lot of years. When I got married, when Rick and I got married, I was still trying to live this way, that things had to be perfect and that I had to be the perfect wife and we had to have the perfect marriage and we were going to have the perfect family. Well, we were told we couldn't have children, so that wasn't perfect. And when we were blessed with an opportunity to adopt our oldest son, Dexter, we thought, yay, that's perfect. Or at least I thought, yay, that's perfect. And then a year later gave birth to our son, Isaac. So we have the perfect family. Well, no. Dexter had some situations that were beyond his control from birth. So he struggled a lot. And if any of you have not yet heard Dexter's testimony, I would encourage you to ask him about that. And Isaac, our youngest son, was born with special needs, so that wasn't perfect. I could not make perfect happen, and it took me a long time to realize that perfect isn't my job. Perfect is the job of Jesus. He is the only one that is perfect. I would pray a lot in those early years as a young mom and a young wife for God to fix things and to make things perfect. It took a lot of time with God for me to realize that it doesn't need to be perfect. He is perfect, and that's enough. All I was supposed to do was trust and obey and to respond in faith to what he gave me. That I was to take those situations and bring glory to him. And also to realize that it's not about me. It's about Jesus. This journey is about him. So I don't strive so much to be perfect. I think I look to it as an example, but I know I can't reach it here on earth. But I've learned to trust more and more in the one who is perfect. And especially now, during these really scary times, I still struggle. This is not part of my plan, likely not part of your plan either. But we have to trust. We have to trust in the one who is perfection. We have to trust in the one who is our salvation and our power and our authority and our kingdom. Praise God.
Hey, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tyler LeGuff. I'm pastoral intern here at Summerside. A lot of my job kind of revolves around the youth ministry, communications, and graphic design, and actually for the last little while, a lot of video editing. So it's really weird that I'm about to edit the video I'm making for you right now. But yeah, I would love to share a little bit of my story, especially when I was young and first came to know who Jesus was. I actually didn't grow up in a Christian family. I didn't grow up in a family that went to church or talked about that a lot. Both my parents kind of had some religious background, but it was more just like, these are things you're supposed to do. So I was like christened as a kid because that's what you did. And my dad was a Roman Catholic, whatever that looks like, but not practicing. And so I grew up never really knowing what exactly church was or what that meant. It was never something that even on my radar. The other thing that many of you guys may not know about me, this story may come as a shock, but I was a kid who got in trouble a lot. I was a bad kid. I was like suspended weekly, if not more, just doing things to cause problems, and I like to just see how people would react to that. But when you do that, something that happens is you kind of get labeled, and people start thinking about you a certain way, and so things would happen. It's like, oh, it must have been Tyler again. And so I had this reputation that kind of followed me around, that I was just this rotten, no good kid. And even as a child in grade 1, I knew what that meant and how that felt. I may not have been able to vocalize that, but I did know what that meant. So in grade 1, I moved schools. We moved like across Adelaide in London, which means you go to a different school. I wasn't a fan of that, and so somebody told me that if you were bad enough, you'd go back to the other school, because the other school was for bad kids. So I did everything in my power to go back. And finally I was told that, hey, that's not the case. You're gonna have to stay here. So I did, and I started making some friends there. And actually there's one kid, Andrew, that I started hanging out with, and I'm not the kid he should have hung out with. Like, very, like, obviously, like, he was a good kid and I was not. But every day at recess, he would come up and be like, hey, can I tell you some stuff about, like, this friend of mine? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'd like, listen to him for like 5 minutes and then run off and go see how I could get in trouble. But yeah, Andrew started sharing with me these stories about this friend of his and these crazy cool things he would do. And it started to intrigue me more and more, and I would listen a little more and listen a little more. And finally he's like, hey, why don't you come out with me to this church thing I go to called Awana? I was like, cool, yeah, I'll go there. And it's a new place. I've never experienced something like that before. I've never been to church. I wonder what I could do there to shake things up, right? And so if you guys haven't already figured that out, the friend that Andrew was telling me about was Jesus. This kid in grade 1 sharing his faith and his relationship with Jesus with me and inviting me out to church. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, when I went to church, I had no idea that this was a place that you must be respectful and do things differently. I was the same kid I was 5 minutes ago when I was at school, when I went to church. And yeah, I was disciplined at Awana as well. I was going weekly. I really enjoyed the program, memorizing verses and achieving different like jewels in the crowns and stuff like that. I loved it. But I didn't act differently. I still got in trouble, but there was something different about how the people there treated me as opposed to the people at school or in other areas of my life when I was being rebuked. There was this love behind it, whereas opposed to the teachers at school would say, oh, there's that kid again, and oh, Tyler, like, once again, go off to the office and I get suspended. These people rebuked me at the church, but in love, and they would sit down and talk with you and pray with you, and that was just so radically different. They didn't look at me with the reputation that I knew I had, and they looked at me completely different. And as I continued to experience this and memorize the verses, one of the verses that I had to memorize was Romans 5:8, that tells us that God demonstrates his own love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And that verse stuck with me. I knew what it meant to be the enemy of people, to be this person that has this dissension and this fight with other people. But that there's still love shown through that. These leaders and these people at this church just radically changed how I experienced that and showed that love of God to me. And yeah, I accepted Christ into my life. Later on that year, I continued going to Awana, and as that year of Awana ended, actually, I invited my parents out because they had, on Sunday morning, they had an awards ceremony, and they were supposed to invite parents out, and so I earned some awards for like memorizing stuff. So I said, why don't you come out with us? And that was the first morning that my parents, my brother, and myself went to church, and it continued from there. I'm not going to say things were amazing and I completely 180 degreed in grade 1 because of this change, but God continued to work in my life. And if I can say one thing, it's just that children are not second class and second-rate citizens of the kingdom. The boldness of a child in grade 1 brought my parents and my brother to church for the first time, that has set me on a trajectory that has put me into camps and youth ministries, and I'm Bible college and seminary and preaching the word because the boldness of one kid, and we can each have that, young, old, no matter what. And yeah, God has radically changed my life because of a friend who decided to hang out with a kid he probably shouldn't have. So yeah, that's a little piece of my story.